What's poppin', everybody? Sailor4, and indeed, I'm gonna show you guys how to make the tag team Gengar and Mimikyu GX work in Expanded. We're gonna need a few older cards, but I'm gonna show you guys a really solid list to really try out this Gengar and Mimikyu GX card. That's really cool. This deck is basically very similar to Lost, well, not Lost Gar, Vilegar. Yeah, getting this stuff confused. But yeah, very similar to that old deck. You combine a Gengar that uses poltergeist, does a lot of damage if your opponent has a lot of trainer cards stuck in their hand, and you combine this Vileplume, which is also based on an older Vileplume card in Undaunted that basically blocks your opponent from using any item cards from his or her hand. It actually blocks both players, actually. Yeah, I shouldn't be making this mistake. As soon as you get Vileplume out, you can't play trainer card or item cards either. But this is how we're going to make this Gengar work. You need this Vileplume from Ancient Origins, so you're going to need a few of these older cards if you want to build this in real life. But this is strictly an expanded deck, and it's going to be kind of cool. So, like I've said, Vileplume is an integral part of this deck. You got to run the basic Oddish here. I like this one from the Burning Shadow set. All of them have 50 HP. This one has a poison and attack you can't really use, but a 1 retreat 50 HP is the best one, I think. If you want to use a few of the other ones, it's up to you. Uh, then I run 1 Gloom for my stage 1 Pokemon. I run this one from Boundaries Crossed. Once again, I think it's the best one. All of them have 80 HP, and this one has 1 retreat and a water resistance. There's one that has 90 HP at the very, I think, but it has a double retreat cost, and that's not good. So I went with this one. It's nice. You honestly won't ever attack with any of these Pokemon, and even Vileplume, it doesn't have a great attack, and we don't run any grass energies anyway. So you gotta run this Pokemon. Now, the main attacker, Gengar and Mimikyu GX. So I actually got very lucky. I wanted to build this deck from day one, but I didn't manage to get the Gengar GX cards. And I was opening a couple of packs one day online, and just managed to get 2 of these almost consecutively. So I was able to make this deck and play around with this deck. Ideally, you want to have 3 or 4 of these to have the best chance of opening with it. You probably won't ever use 4 or even 3 because this guy gives 3 prizes when it dies, and you probably don't. The game shouldn't be going as long. If you lock out your opponent right and they can't really do shit, you're not going to power up more than 2 of these guys probably anyway. So you only really need 2, but you would want to run more to open with this. Because I don't have any more than 2 and I just have 2, you can get the job done even with 2. I run 4 of these Emolga. So this might be a bit weird, but this is actually an excellent card that has so many uses in this deck and in so many other decks. You guys have probably seen it, how effective it is in the Lost March deck in Standard, all the rat combos you can do, and the help it gives that deck. It's kind of a similar thing here. This Pokemon is a basic, so it's easy to use, easy to just slap in this deck. It has Fear Retreat, meaning that if we open with it, we can easily move it out of the way and put something like Gengar in the active position, which is very nice. It's one of the key reasons why I run these, because you really want to have Gengar out in the active position turn 1. You want to go either first or second. Your opponent's going to have 1 turn to play down trainers, and then you use Horror House GX. Your opponent can't use cards, and you want to evolve into the next turn to your Vileplume. You want to turn 1, get Gengar out in the active position. You get at least 2 Oddishes just in case one dies. And then on your following turn, you want to evolve into your Vileplume and basically lock items as soon as possible, as soon as turn 2 or 3, depending on if you play first or second. So this is why this card is important. It has Fear Retreat. If we open with it, we can move it out of the way and put Gengar GX. I built this deck to basically have very strong access to basic Pokemon. Turn 1, get those guys, all the Pokemon really quickly. You guys are going to see. But this is one of the reasons why it's in here. The other reason is that with Nuzzly Gathering, we can use this Pokemon's effect and search additional Emolgas into our hand. And with those Emolgas, it's basically like a draw card. you thin out your deck. You can use the other Emolgas to discard them to make the effect of Pokemon communication easy, to mitigate the effect of the discarding effect of Ultra Ball, and even Mystery Treasure, all these cards. And it just really thins out the deck. You guys really need to see it in an example match to really understand the usefulness of this Pokemon. Now, if you have more Gengars, the ideal thing would be to run like four or three of these, and then drop one or two of this maybe. Just cause I would run three of these, not two maybe. So perhaps three Gengars is good. But I really just like having this flexible Pokemon with free retreat that can just search me other Emolgas and I can discard them. It really just makes it so that we don't mulligan a lot too, because there's only a bunch of basic Pokemon as you guys can see. You got the Gengars, the Oddishes, and this playset of Emolgas here, and Lele. So it really is just a really straightforward, streamlined, simple deck. You don't want to have extra shit you don't need. Okay, so this is for Emolga. I hope this explanation made at least a little bit of sense. And then for the last Pokemon, we have Tabulele GX. Tabulele GX is important because it can grab us any supporter when we play it down. It can actually be an attacker in this deck as well. We attach a few psychic energies on it. But it is very important. I'm running, of course, Mystery Treasures and Ultra Ball, Pokemon Communication. You want to get this card turn 1 if you can, because you definitely want to use one of these Bridgettes. I guess I'm jumping straight into the supporters here, but it's very important you guys understand this. So Bridgette, I've got three of these girls here. Now, normally, if you know me and all of my decks, I don't really want to favor a supporter that gets you basic Pokemon. I would rather use a bunch of nest balls and favor a card like Lily that lets me get a lot more cards in general, and I see my pieces that way. But in this deck, it's just very important to guarantee get those Oddishes and Gengars turn 1. I run three of these girls here, so we have a good chance of seeing it. I don't want to run 4 because it can clog. With 3, a Lele, Communication, Mystery Treasures, and an Ultra Ball, we should be able to have a very high chance of seeing Bridgette, getting Bridgette turn 1 in almost every game. Maybe there's a few times it won't happen, but it should be pretty consistent, and that's the point. You want to get, depending on the basic Pokemon you have, your field, you want to have at least 2 Oddishes that are going to be a Vileplume. You want to get your Vileplumes out, have 2 of those to be safe. You want to have your 2 Gengars, or if you play more, you want to have 2 on the field, 1 active, 1 on the bench as backup. Start powering up the second one too. Maybe a spot for Lele in case you need to play this, and the Emolgas that you're going to play down and search the Pokemon. So that's basically what you want to do. So if you open with Gengar, what you're normally going to do with Bridgette is search 2 Oddishes and maybe another Gengar or Emolga. If you already have an Oddish, then you get 1 Oddish less, you get a bunch of other Pokemon with Bridgette. But this is why this card is in here, and I run so many of these. It's just crucial to get out Gengar turn 1 to attach Psychic Energies, not really miss a beat because this deck doesn't have Energy Acceleration. If you can, use Horror House GX turn 1. If you don't, it's okay. Maybe you can use attach a second energy and get the plus. Give your opponent a hand as well, and you have a guaranteed big poltergeist attack. It really depends on the game state, but ideally you want to use this turn 1 Horror House, use this move, and then by your next turn you're already going to have Vileplume out and start the lock. Not really give a chance to your opponent to play almost any items. Get the lock super early. But anyways, this is how this deck basically plays. So let's look at the rest of the cards here. Before I jump into the rest of the supporters, let's look at the items. A spec of choice is of course computer search, maximizing consistency. I debated of running a card like Gold Potion because healing Gengar is actually a little bit important in this deck. I'll get to that later. But thing is, once you get Vileplume out, all of your own item cards are dead. So computer search at the very least, when I have it, I can just use it, get my consistency going. This is also a way that we can instantly get Bridgette if we need to. It's just a very flexible card. The Joker card in Pokemon computer search gets you anything. And with the Emolgas, like I've said, The discarding, we can soften that up, and it's good. We run one field blower, only one of these. Normally I run two of these sort of cards in my deck, either one field blower and one startling megaphone and expanded. In this deck, once again, because we're going to item lock ourselves too, I only run one. There's not really any specific tools and stadiums you want to get rid of. You've got your own counter stadiums as well, but just having one around is not bad. Okay, now for the searching cards. We run one nest ball, just one of these to get an additional basic Pokemon. Maybe just a little more help for Brigitte, or maybe we don't see Brigitte, we see one of these, and we have another one of our basic Pokemon. At the worst case scenario, you want to have at least one Oddish and one Gengar. So maybe if you see one of these Pokemon, then you can use the nest ball to grab the other one. But nest ball is still pretty good. One of these fast little card. And then we got the other balls. We have one heavy ball. This is basically an instant way to search one of the three Vileplumes here. Very good. Remember, we want to get out Vileplume as soon as possible. Then I got Pokemon Communication. This card is great. It can fetch me any Pokemon as long as I shuffle another Pokemon back into the deck. We only have 15 Pokemon, so it's not so many. But thanks to Emolga sort of mitigating that cost, letting me search a Pokemon easily, I can usually make that Pokemon Communication live in most situations. It's just very important. It can become an instant Lele, an instant Vileplume, maybe even an Oddish or a Gengar. It's just very good card. Only one is a good enough number for this deck. And then two Mystery Treasures. This is just an easy way to instantly get Gengar out, but also be a Lele searcher, so I can get any supporter. It really just maximizes my consistency, being able to see Brigitte turn 1. So that's why two Mystery Treasures. Alright, and then the Ultra Ball, can't forget that. This is just another good card that just is gonna, it can grab me anything. Like I can use this to grab Lele, Gengar, Vileplume. It might be a little bit weird. You guys see like one of each for balls, you know, two Mystery Treasures, one Communication, these sorts of numbers, but it's kind of tough to explain. You'll have to take my word for it, or maybe test for yourself. There's situations where if I have like, let's say the third Mystery Treasure and not an Ultra Ball, where I would want to have an Ultra Ball because Ultra Ball can become basically anything, but running maybe too many Ultra Balls, it's not really necessary because we can get Vileplume with Heavy Ball, we can get any basic Pokemon with Nest Ball. Communication and Mystery Treasure are still good. So I basically just rounded them out like this, if this makes sense. But you can tweak them out however you like. For me, it's just one Heavy Ball, Nest Ball, two Treasure, and one Ultra Ball, and the Communication. Okay, then next up we got one Professor's Letter. This is a great card. It can instantly get me two basic energies into the hand from the deck. Like I said before, you don't want to miss a turn of attaching energies on Gengar. You want to have this guy out, be ready to start using Poltergeist as soon as possible. So 2 energy, you know, it's not bad, it's quite cheap, but of course you don't want to miss turns doing this. Okay, and we got to have the rare candies, of course, for these to bring out the Vileplume. As soon as you get the first Vileplume out, these become dead, but we got to run 4 to maximize consistency. Your only other way is to evolve. If you get at least one Vileplume out, then you can just get the Gloom in play and just slowly get into the second Vileplume, just in case. We got one Stretcher for backup. You never know what might happen. I might have to discard one Gengar or any of the other valuable cards early. Ideally, what you want to do, if you have like, let's say a playset of this Gengar card, run 4 Gengar, drop the Stretcher, and then drop 1 Emolga. That's probably the better list there. But since I only have 2, I'm making this work with 2. I've done pretty good so far. This deck can be pretty powerful. I'm going to talk about the matchups later. Alright, we got one Trainer's Mail, just a general consistent card. Consistency card. Grab us anything. We have a lot of trainers. And then I've got my 3 Float Stones. Run a lot of these. This is important because if Oddish becomes active, I want a good chance to see one of these and move Oddish out of the way. You want to have Emolga or Gengar active. And basically, Emolga because it has free retreat. And if you don't start with Gengar, you want to search Gengar and then promote Gengar. So that's why this guy, if it's active, has free retreat, is not bad. But really, you want Gengar turn 1, or you want him to be active. At, at the at the earliest you can attack, like let's say you play second or you play first. If you play first, you can attack. But you want to have Gengar on the first turn you can attack. So you can use Horror House GX and basically just have this Pokemon active is very important. Okay, so that's where the Floatstone comes in. You're going to play this down on the Odysseus. Maybe having one on Gengar is not bad to move him out of the way when he gets hurt. Promote the other one. And then the last card, last non-supporter card, I guess, is the Stadium Ultra of the Moon. Dimension Valley doesn't work with Gengar. He needs 2 Psychic Energies to make the Poltergeist work. And Ultra of the Moon is very important so we can have free retreat around our dudes. This makes it so if I attach a Psychic Energy on a Vileplume, I can retreat it out of the way. If your opponent decides to get it stuck there with free retreat, Gengar gets free retreat, of course. Tapu Lele as well. It's just a good stadium to have around. Counter stadium is very nice. Maybe when they release a broken Prism Psychic Stadium, I'll be running that, but we haven't seen it yet. So 2 Ultra of the Moon is very good. Okay, now for the supporters. I already touched on the importance of Brigitte. Considering the other Pokemon searches, like if you want to run Pokemon like supporters like Apricot Maker or Elm, they really don't work. Apricot Maker, it's not really as efficient. Brigitte really is the most efficient in this specific kind of a deck. It can search you basically all of the guys, both Gengar, Emolgas, Odysseus. It's just very good. It works great in this deck. So run this. Don't run things like Elm or maybe Pokemon Fan Club. There's just no need, I would say. Even Pokemon Fan Club. Okay, we got 1 Chorus. This card is pretty good, especially in this deck when we fill our bench really quickly with Brigitte. This guy can become live very quickly. Then I run the 3 Junipers. This is important. As soon as we get Vileplume out, a lot of our item cards are going to be dead, and we don't care if discarding them anyway. So this card is really just doesn't give you any drawbacks. Very good card. Help me draw a lot of cards at once. Get that Vileplume out. Get our energy pieces. Very good. So 3 of these. Then I run 2 Skyla. This card is very good. It can instantly search as the candy. Get a stadium, get a letter if I need energies, just get so many things. It's just a great card. And then the last, well, one of the last supporters, I guess, I've got 1 Pokemon Center Lady, Guzma and N. So, okay, so these are the sort of tech cards here. So, Pokemon Center Lady, she's in here. She's a supporter, so she's not going to be dead once we get the item lock going. So I can hopefully use this and heal Gengar a little bit, and maybe that 60 damage she heals is kind of significant. The problem with Gengar is that he's our only attacker, and even though 200 HP, 240 HP is very high, if your opponent can dish out like 120 damage and then can dish out 120 next turn, or damage of that nature, then he's going to die pretty quickly. And maybe we won't even have another Gengar ready with Psychic Energies on. So if your opponent is really fast as well, it really kind of sucks. That's why getting the lock is very important early. And it's just really, I need a little bit of healing. I mean, I would run Acerola if I could, but it doesn't really work. I think I'd rather just be able to heal and keep my energies in play. But if you want to do Acerola, then that's good too. It heals special conditions as well. It's not a bad card. I decided to go with this for now. Alright. And then next up we got the Guzma, one of these. If I could, I'd run a bunch of these, but unfortunately there's no space. Like one of the problems of this Vilegar, this new version of Vilegar, I guess, is that the old DP and Heart Gold Soul Silver deck, it ran cards like Claydol. You could use that Pokemon to draw a bunch of cards. Or actually, no, let me think. No, that Pokemon rotated out, so we didn't have that. But what you could do is that you could use the Ghastly from Stormfront and lock your opponent's trainers early, and you you could have still used Spiritomb and a bunch of other cards. So you use Spiritomb to get your evolution pieces that way. So you had a bunch of ways to draw cards, and I guess we still had Uxie too. I don't remember exactly how the old Vilegar list was, but ability to draw is significant, and if we had some sort of ability draw in here, that would have been good. But there's not really any space. Artillery doesn't work well in this deck. I guess Emolga serves that purpose a little bit, giving me more of these in hand that we can use in a way. But yeah, it's not going to be on the level of how Vilegar was back then, but I tried to emulate it as much as I could. Another version, how I built this deck at the beginning, was using the Trevenant with the, I think, not Pumpkaboo, with, fuck, I forgot his fucking name, but the first form of Trevenant. Get that guy out quick, evolve with his attack, and then lock Pokemon that way while we get our Vileplume out. But it's not as effective. It's just more effective to open with this guy, use Horror House GX, and get your Vileplume out quicker that way. But anyways, I'm all over the place, but yeah, one Guzma and then the last card, N. So I'm running 3N and no Cynthia. By the way, there's not any VS Seekers in here because that card can become dead too. So I opted not to run VS Seekers. There's a bunch of trainer cards I would normally run that aren't in here. Okay. Now N is really your only way to manipulate your opponent's hand. You got to remember, you need to have a bunch of, your opponent needs to have a bunch of trainers in hand for him to be stuck, and you can do a lot of damage with Poltergeist. And a lot of times your opponent, he's going to be clever. He might find a way to discard them. He might find a way to play them down, not really leave a bunch of cards in his hand, or make sure all of the cards in his hand are just Pokemon and energies. So that can be annoying. N is really our only way to reset your opponent's hand while we get some cards as well. I don't really like peeking red card, and that card becomes dead after you get Vileplume out anyway. It's not as effective. I haven't really found any other way. It'd be good if we had like an ability Pokemon that just would give your opponent a lot of cards, or a supporter like Field Worker where you draw and your opponent's draws too. These older supporters. We just don't have these cards right now. Swen is the most efficient supporter for that job, I guess. Giving your opponent 6 cards, I guess if you get lucky, they'll get a bunch of items, a bunch of trainers, and you can use Poltergeist effectively. And then the last thing is the energies. 11 Psychic energies. I used to run 12, but I think that's overkill. We don't really need that many in this deck. So I dropped it to 11 with the letter and put the mill in. Alright, so this video is running probably very long, but I gotta tell you guys about the matchups. So all of the games I played with this deck, what usually happens is, because I made it so consistent, I'm able to use Horror House basically my first turn if I have this guy active and I play either first or second really. So your opponent gets that sort of lock for one turn, then you make sure you evolve into this, and then they really can't do shit. So most of my games so far have been either the opponent scoops early or they scoop kind of halfway. They don't really let the game play out, but it's because I basically lock them and I'm basically fucking them over. Now, if that doesn't happen, if your opponent is running any Pokemon like Hoopa with the Safeguard ability, Pokemon like the Alolan Ninetales that blocks GXs, and basically any of these Pokemon that block GXs, you're kind of screwed. There really isn't no way to counter them. I don't have any attackers besides Gengar, and I guess maybe the Tapu Lele can go in as well in situations. But that's really it. There isn't room for anything else. I've run this deck like this to make it as consistent as possible to get this guy out. So that means you're going to have a bunch of matchups that they're basically auto losses. There's not really anything you can do. You can try and squeeze in other attackers, energy acceleration like Malamar or whatever the fuck. It's just not going to work out nicely for you. So those Pokemon kind of screw you over. This is why more Guzmas maybe would have been good, but it's not even a good out. Now, the other Pokemon that really fucks you up, Zoroark GX. If you play against Zoroark GX, which ironically is one of the most popular decks in Expanded, if not the most popular, it kind of died down so far from what I've noticed ever since Team Up came out, but I think it should still be very popular. It takes care of this guy very easily. There's not much you can do about it. If you get the lock really early and they're kind of struggling to do their shit, then maybe you have a chance. But as soon as Zoroark GX can do 120, then you kind of get screwed. It also has a psychic resistance. It's a big Pokemon with 210 HP. It's not the easiest matchup. Maybe it's not impossible, but you need to get an amazing lock early going and really just have the nuts. But Darkness Pokemon are really problematic. This Pokemon is going to give 3 prizes. 240 HP isn't really that much when you give out 3 prizes and you're weak to Dark. It can be very difficult. You know, the Darkrai's, they're probably going to have a good time with this Pokemon too. Just any Gengar, any Dark deck. So those are the problems. Basically, Pokemon that are going to block this guy because we have very limited attackers. It's just this guy and Darkness Pokemon. Those are mostly the decks that I've had a little bit of trouble. Well, not a little bit. I've had a few auto losses against Hoopa, and that kind of sucks. Trevenant, I guess, is something like I've said in the beginning. I did try running a Trevenant playset as well, like running 3 Trevenants and 4 of the first form. I don't remember it right now. It's not Pumpkaboo. I don't think it's called Pumpkaboo. Pumpkaboo is the other ghost. I don't remember the name, but the dude that you use to Phantom, yeah, Phantom, that's what it's called, to bring out Trevenant out with his attack. I guess you can use that Pokemon against a little Ninetales and Hoopa, slowly build it up, but it's not going to be very effective, especially against Hoopa. Kills it with weakness. Okay, so this has been a crazy deck video. I've been going all over the place, but I'm really excited and I really feel really good about this deck. I've had a lot of success with it so far. A lot of games won and expanded. It can be quite deadly, depending if you play against the right deck. Your opponent doesn't have the counters. You get the item lock early, and they run a bunch of items in their deck. You basically fuck them over very, very hard. Horror House GX combined with Poltergeist combined with Irritating Pollen. It's just a very nasty combo. Like, you force your opponent to not do shit and basically almost FTK them. Like, there's been situations where the opponent just doesn't have a chance to play down any other Pokemon. They only have one dude. I use Horror House GX. They can't do shit, and then they're just basically forced to lose, just like that. Alright, so I'm losing my breath here. I think I covered pretty much everything. I'm going to show you guys games with this deck, of course. It's really fun. I really like it. It's probably not tier 0. It's not maybe even... It could be tier 1. You just have a bunch of bad matchups. But it's definitely very effective in Expanded. In Standard, this guy, you can only use him with things like the Omastar. That's not really that good. At least so far it hasn't done anything. I don't think it really is that good. Combine this with Omastar, but at least with Vileplume, we have some consistency shit going in Expanded. Alright. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys subscribe, leave a like, share this with your friends. And I guess I'll see you guys on the Gengar matches. Yeah, this cool guy right here. Gengar. Cerebral 94, and I'll see you guys soon. What's up?